everyone. Happy Friday. You must be happy the way I am, or maybe not. How are you, Jose?
Not as excited as you are, but yeah, happy Friday, yo.
I think that the coffee is kicking in. I also started my day with like a group of like Latina women. So I don't know, I just feel a little bit inspired. So hopefully you can keep up today.
Hopefully I can, yes. I started my day not like that, but...
I haven't had lunch. Have you had lunch?
No, not yet.
Did you have any breakfast today?
Yeah, I had some breakfast. I ate some bread, pan dulce, and then I also ate
some... what pan dulce?
Conchas. I love conchas.
Okay, this is the real question. Was it strawberry, chocolate, or vanilla?
Vanilla.
I'm team chocolate, dude. That's the best one.
Well, yeah, but it's hard to find now.
So your favorite is also chocolate?
My favorite is chocolate.
But you had vanilla?
Yeah.
Okay, we don't hate you, vanilla lovers. If you like it, more chocolate for me. But let's get into it, Jose. Today we have a couple of topics that we're going to be discussing.
Yeah.
One of them is one that I'm really worried about. Well, actually, I'm worried about all of them. So hopefully...
It's hard to worry about all of them, right?
I can take a deep breath and chill. But I do believe that information is power. So we'll be discussing the Aliens Enemy Act. We'll be discussing, hopefully, maybe if we have time, other executive order that is going to have a significant impact on our community, and the potential dismantling of the Department of Education. So just like always, if you have questions and you're catching us, you can always drop them in the comments and we will verify them. Big shout out to Priscilla and the whole marketing team Aliento who hold it down to ensure that we answer your questions. Anything that I'm missing, Jose, or you want to add?
Not yet. It might be, if we wait like 2 more minutes, probably there's another breaking news, executive order. So we just finished so we can make sure that, at least for what has happened that past week.
Yes, so again, we do these weekly recaps. There's so much content. Sometimes I just want to like shut down my phone. You might be feeling the same way. So hopefully if you really care about immigration, education, this is your 15-minute segment that you can get a little bit of a recap about what's going on. So this Aliens Enemies Act, I don't want to get caught up in language. I think this title sucks. That's just my personal opinion. But let's get into it. I know that there's been a lot of controversy around that, but maybe people who are hearing, they, like me, might not like the title of it, or they might be thinking about that we're like green individuals from Mars, who knows. But can you break it down for us, like what it means, what it does? Is there any precedent? I know this is taking us back to the 1700s from what I know. So break it down for us.
Yeah, interesting. Like this bill, this law was 22 years after the Declaration of Independence. So the country as a whole was fairly new. We're coming to our 250-year anniversary. So
I don't know. Not even my great grandma was alive.
Maybe. I don't know your grandparents. But typically this type of executive order, this legislation has been invoked in the past in a time of war. The last time it was invoked here in the United States, it was during World War II, and it was predominantly used to round up Italian, Germans, and Japanese individuals, mostly U.S. citizens, but because during World War II, those were the Axis power. So the U.S. government under President Roosevelt decided to build temporary encampments. Here in Arizona was one of the places, but very remote, and where people, U.S. citizens, were sent in health for months, some of them several years, and a lot of people were abused. But that was the last time it was used. So this time, as has been trying to be invoked, we're not in a time of war. Typically, Congress has to pass a resolution and declare that we're in a time of war to actually be in war. A president cannot declare war. A president can declare a conflict and has some maneuvers with the Pentagon and can use the military, but a president does not have the right to declare war. That's one of the things, the bedrocks of the U.S. Constitution, which I think the current administration is trying to push the bounds of what is constitutional and what is not.
Yeah, so I think that is really important for us to, again, always look back in history to understand how this has been done in the past. I was actually reading a couple of stories of the survivors of Japanese Americans that actually are still alive today, that were in internment camps. And it's a very dark history of the United States where there were people that were, as you mentioned, round up and be trapped in these internment camps without due process, without any rationale, and they lived there even up to 2 years. So definitely it's very troublesome. It's something that we are monitoring. And I really appreciate that you're breaking it down about like who actually has the power to declare war. We're seeing that that right now it seems that the new presidency, the new administration is really trying to bend what they can and cannot do. So here we want to give you factual information. So one thing, as we see sometimes on Instagram, it's like what we see versus the reality versus what actually happens. So that's something that we want to monitor, but I think we have to make sure that we understand who has the right to do it and who doesn't. So what are some of the fears, I guess, or speculations of what could happen, or what do we think this is going to be utilized, where there's any details about how this new administration is trying to enforce this Aliens Enemy Act?
We can only go by the actions they have taken, right? So again, this is something that happened last weekend, and there's been still litigation. The administration is using this executive order to facilitate the removal of people who are here in the country undocumented. Specifically, they deported but a little bit over 100 Venezuelans to El Salvador through this process without due process. Basically, is they didn't get to get in court to actually prove that you are
affiliated with a gang member.
With the gang. The majority of them are not. It's just they're going off at people who have tattoos. So again, very stereotyping, very like 19th century kind of a thing. It's like, oh, you look a certain way, so therefore you must be X, Y, and Z.
And something that I want to caution, like our audience members, folks who are like, even maybe if you're watching this and you're sharing this with a friend, is that to really check ourselves, to do the research, to understand what's going on. But also I saw that in some of the videos from that coverage that they were even like taking away their hair, right? Like they were, what is it called? Razoring them? Shaving, thank you. I'm like, shaving their heads. So I think that that's so dehumanizing, but also I think that it shows that like we all have biases, and when you see someone like that, they're trying to depict a specific picture about who immigrants are, and we know better. So we have to make sure that we are not falling for these horrible dehumanizing tactics.
Yeah, this administration, specifically around immigration, has used visuals, whether it be shaving up individuals, whether it be like tattoos, art, or whether an individual looks a certain way or coming from a certain area, and use it for them, as you mentioned, to dehumanize them, somewhat strip their humanity. So it becomes, so the American public is like, oh yes, these people are bad people, so therefore yes, we can do this because they're not necessarily good people. But actually going through the process of figuring out why are people here and do they have legitimate claim of asylum, because the majority of them came through asylum.
I know, Jose, I love asking questions, so I'm going to try to keep it like precise because we have another topic that I want to discuss, but give us an honorable mention about an executive order 14159. So can you just give us an honorable mention about what the heck is that executive order? It has a pretty bad title. If you want to research it, you can go ahead and do it. It's a little teaser. But tell us in essence, like there were, I believe, like three main components that included in that executive order 14159. You can also look it up in the caption. Again, executive order 14159. Can you break it down? What were the major components that one happened, and why are we monitoring it? Again, just a recap before you answer. Executive orders, some of them, they might be within the power of the presidency. Some of it might not be within the power of the president. So this is the news that we know as of today. That can always change, especially if that is not within the power of the presidency. We can foresee that litigation could happen. So that's why we see kind of this is like, well, is it in? Is it not out? Is it in? Is it out? And typically it's because if it's being contested, if it's not within the presidential powers.
Well, it's up question, right? It's up for debate, and a judge will determine that, and then appeal to another judge, and some of them are going to go to the Supreme Court. So for us, we're just virtually saying our understanding of it. It's still, again, a lot of it has to be litigated. And again, those of you who are history majors or love civics, you're basically going to get what it was like, maybe how it was when the original Constitution was framed, and people having the sort of the parameters of how we're supposed to be governed. But there's several provisions. One of them that is key for us is that it specifically mentions nonprofits that support services for undocumented individuals to remove funding and terminate contracts, and try to recoup some of the federal grants. So I know a lot of folks within the immigrant space who have supported immigrants, or maybe they don't necessarily are like us specifically. Their mission is around supporting immigrants, but they may have some programming. They're worried about that.
Like, how are you going to implement this, right? Like, we going to ask all nonprofits to be asking for immigration status of people? Like, that's a question that we don't know. It begs the question.
I think the intention of it is to make sure that all nonprofits ask and then don't provide services for that. And then the other piece of it is around expedited removals. Again, another one is, I think, it's a violation of due process. The courts are arguing that. Hopefully that goes into effect, into place.
So for our friends who are not really familiar with expedited removals, can you just like explain what that is? I mean, I think for me it's very explicit because I live, breathe immigration as an impacted person, but what is an expedited removal?
Yeah, so the short version, and attorneys are going to be like, that's not necessarily how it works.
We're not attorneys. We're just trying to make it accessible for the common Joe or Maria.
So typically when people are arrested for a suspect in the country being undocumented, they have to go through a judge and go through a hearing and be the merits of the case, depending on, are you able to get a bond and you get a hearing and you're considered to be priority or not priority, you can be in detention while the whole process goes, or you can be outside. And then it goes through that process. Expedited removal is basically shorter,
making it
faster, and your hearing is faster. Some of them don't require to actually go in front of a judge, and that's what we have seen in the past when you're able to have large numbers of deportations. Because right now the courts are backlogged. There's over 1 million cases, immigration cases. So what the administration is doing, instead of maybe bringing up more judges or clarifying how judges can rule or fighting those procedures, what they're trying to do is fast track that. And what has happened in the past, when you do that, a lot of people who have legitimate claims, whether it be asylum, whether it be visa or other process, they typically get caught up and they'll deport it. And then therefore they'll have that in the record, and then they would not be eligible for future relief.
Which is so sad, because something that makes me so proud of, like, being raised in America, I embrace this like nation even with all our flaws, is that like we are gonna give people a fair shot, right? Like we shouldn't be persecuting people if they're innocent. What is the saying? You're innocent until proven guilty. So this is exactly what we're advocating as an organization, is just give people their first shot at the courts and let them be judged by their merits of the case, which it doesn't happen with expedited orders. I know that there's a couple of other components, but I really want to talk about the Department of Education. So I'm going to be moving into the next segment, Jose, because as a former teacher, I am really upset, but I'm gonna try
How upset are you?
Really upset, and I'm gonna try to like take a deep breath, because anger is not a strategy, I was told once. So let's break it down. Last time we talked about what the Department of Education does, what it doesn't do. So if you haven't seen it, go check it out. But this week there was an announcement by the Trump administration saying that they're gonna be dismantling the Department of Education. Break it down. What's the latest news on that?
Well, he did go through, right? That's something that was on Project 2025, something that a lot of people in the education space during the election were warning about, specifically if you care about education.
We should all care about education. But anyways, keep going.
Yeah.
I'm going to try to check myself.
Yes, and some people will be like, I do care, and I just think that federal government should not be involved in education. But we'll get into that conversation. Again, only Congress has the authority to create or dissolve an agency. So while this executive order from Donald Trump, he cannot dismantle, well, he can make the Department of Education non-functional and remove staff, which he already has laid up about half of the staff, remove some of the programs and make it that it's non-functional. So therefore, in essence, the Department of Education doesn't exist. But in theory, it cannot remove it from the agency department.
So the president doesn't have the powers to do that. It should be Congress. So what happened with that?
Yes, and so a lot of these things has to still be sorted out, but at least something that we do know right now, as now the Secretary of Education, Linda McMahon, whose background is in pro wrestling. Again, not necessarily an education person or that sort, but hey, we live in wild times.
She might be from the Wild Wild West. I say no. Anyways. Sidetrack.
Okay. Well, I think the biggest concern that we have, for at least with us, is that the Department of Education was created to support traditional marginalized communities, students specifically. Those are low-income students, students with disabilities, rural students, and tribal students. And then in the data, in terms of we look of in the cities, low-income students, majority of them are Latino, or Black students, and then some of them are also Asian. So it's going to impact those school districts, the districts that are predominantly Latino. And there's going to be, based here, at least on the numbers that we have gotten, Arizona receives about $855 million from the Department of Education for K-12 schools. Again, a lot of that funding goes to Title I students, but also goes to students with disabilities and English language learners. At least from Project 2025, I believe a lot of folks who wrote this, this blueprint, don't believe the current way that we're educating English language learners to acquire English is sufficient, and they want to do full immersion. So this is gonna be a struggle.
Let's be clear, Jose, because the Department of Education doesn't dictate necessarily what's the curriculum. We talked about it on the other live. What they do is to make sure that they are in compliance with how that money should be spent, right? If the money is supposed to go to Title I, which is low-income students, that's what the schools and the districts need to be utilizing it. Is the money is supposed to be appropriated to support our students with disabilities? That's the oversight that the Department of Education does, that without a Department of Education, the oversight is going to go to the states. And what about if the states are not really following through? So it begs a lot of questions about if the intention of those dollars that are taxpayer dollars are actually doing it to serve the most vulnerable of our communities, including our students with disabilities. Is that correct, Jose?
In a nutshell, yeah. I think the other one that has come up in last an hour ago was that Trump has directed the Department of Education to basically transfer the $1.6 million student loan portfolio to the Small Business Administration. The Small Business Administration staff got cut by 40%. Because of that transition and so things are going, we expect to be some issues and not probably implemented well initially, because it's a huge portfolio to a new agency that doesn't really have the experience, and staff is cut. So
as a business owner, that seems like a recipe for disaster. So we'll be more looking out. We have Priscilla in the back end. It's like, you all are talking too much. We need to cut it up. Thank you so much, Jose, for breaking this this news that happening this last week. In little bites. Thank you all so much. If you have more questions, you want to learn more, if you want us to do a part 2 of this, drop it up in the comments, and then we'll catch you next time. So any parting words or tips for the community?
I think in this moment, again, make sure to take care of yourself and don't lose despair. Things may look chaotic, things may look bleak, it doesn't feel like you can do much, but at the end of the day, we must never give up. We must continue fighting, and we must be the champions, the adults that we wish we had, and what our community and our kids need now.
And for our young people, don't forget that you have a voice. Sometimes adults don't get it right all the way, and we need your energy. We need you to continue to push us. And don't forget that you have a voice. And even if it looks dark, we have to link arms and be together, because we're not going to let despair be the winner on this. We are going to let community and empowerment be at the leading front of everything that is going on. So take care. Make sure you drink water and that you have a good weekend. Bye. See you next time.